Hey, hey, hey. Time for another Out of This World story from rSpace. I discovered my wife is a sub to another man. In February, I, 37 male, discovered my wife, 39 female, of 10 years, together total of 16, had gotten deep into the BDSM community on Instagram when syncing photos between our computers and seeing some very interesting photos. I knew she always had an interest in that stuff, something I was happy to indulge in the bedroom, but wasn't necessarily my thing. I'm just glad she was having fun. It's part of the give and take of marriage. I learned she now identified as a bratty submissive, and had a dom, who was a married man in France. She openly, in her bio and posts, identified as belonging to him. There were daily on-topic texts, calls, photos, videos between the two, in addition to photos and videos on her Instagram page. She also shared intimate details about our married life with him. We have an elementary school child, and the affair partner has small children as well. She was planning to visit him in France. I occasionally have conferences there, and she had asked next time if she could come along and do some solo travel while I worked. I said sure. Later in the texts, she even bragged I had gotten a raise so they could go somewhere nice when she came to visit. She denies all of this as just a fantasy. It makes sense now why she was learning French, which I thought was a COVID hobby. It also makes sense why she was spending so much time running errands. I thought she needed to get out of the house, but it was to call and text him. I confronted her about the online affair. She said it would stop. I asked her to cut off all contact with the affair partner. She resisted and did not seem very remorseful, which should have been red flags. I tried to be compassionate towards someone I see as in pain. I was not angry all the time. She said it was the result of not having her emotional needs fulfilled after our daughter was born and my career took off. Reasonable enough. We can fix that. I kept things cool for a few weeks as I recovered, tried to be more affectionate, but it was clear she was not interested in sex. With me at least. I figured time would heal. I pushed couples counseling. A few weeks later, she was back in contact with the affair partner. When I confronted her again, her explanation for this was that I did not respond strongly enough to discovering the first affair. Was I supposed to be a dom and claim her for myself like that? Maybe. This time, I told her we were getting divorced and she needed to take responsibility, giving up her accounts and get help. She waited for days to decide. Reluctantly, she sent me some of her account information, pouted for several days, let me look at her phone once or twice, throwing a tantrum each time. Meanwhile, she demonized me as abusive and controlling her to her friends and family. I eventually gave up on the monitoring. It was driving me crazy. I was able to get her to come with me to couples counseling twice before she quit. She went one time to solo therapy before quitting. She kept hiding her phone, clearing her browser history, using private browsing. She seemed more concerned that I would interfere with his marriage than the state of our own. She even offered me an open marriage on multiple occasions, which I refused, told her I wanted to work on us. For most of March and April, things were tense. She was dismissive of counseling. She kept insisting on her privacy, which she was simply using to stay in contact with the man all through April, via other Instagram accounts, Snapchat, even Spotify, her sending him songs about being in love with someone else but stuck with your husband. She was even arranging to get gifts shipped to her through her sister's workplace. She now wears jewelry I suspect is a gift from him, or a symbol of being bound by him. Affair partner's messages to her were all about how I neglected her, how only he could meet her needs, how he would make her his sub, and all the BDSM things they would do together. He was pressuring her into using ropes and a threesome. I have always taken care of everything for my wife. I even wrote the affair partner an email telling him how wrong he was and nothing more than a cheap thrill. My wife insists this whole thing has nothing to do with sex, but about being seen, wanted, and understood. But then at the same time, she says she is a sub and I'm not a dom, and would not like her when she's in her subspace, implying it is about sex to a degree. Also, the texts, videos, and voice messages are all insanely sexual. For what it's worth, she has expressed little interest and made it clear she is not interested in my far more vanilla preferences. It only goes one way, it seems. I am actually insanely jealous of all the fun stuff they did together. Would have been fun to do that with my wife. She says that she has felt neglected for years and has been trying to tell me, which was news to me. To a certain degree, when you have children and careers, it's not always going to be a romantic movie fantasy, but we did our best. We had talked a couple times over the years and made adjustments as needed. I had no idea it was nearly as bad as she now suggested. I asked her why she never suggested couples counseling. She said she was scared. When I suggested it might have been tainted by chronic low-grade depression, I was accused of calling her crazy. She has always resisted therapy dealing with her own issues, including her father's suicide last year. Meanwhile, I love therapy and make use of it as needed for years, but never been able to get her interested. I regret not pushing that harder. She would not commit to giving him up or committing to our relationship, so I hired a divorce lawyer, had them draw up papers, told her to get her own. I've had real estate agents come by to prepare the house for listing, and we've put together a parenting plan with shared custody. I was hoping in this process she would wake up to what she was doing, but she just kind of goes along with it. She is not prepared for a divorce at all. She took her parents with her to meet her divorce attorney. She has no job, no savings, no credit, all through her own actions. She thinks we are still going to be friends after the divorce, and it won't affect our daughter at all as long as we keep things civil. It's Pollyannish. It's like she has regressed to being a rebellious teenager, deluding herself. She even started smoking again like she did as a teenager. She's not showing signs of mania, major depression, or schizophrenia. Every time I brought up divorce, I would also offer her an alternative, which would be to build something new together that met her needs, to rebuild the trust and intimacy. She said it was a risk to let down her walls. I said it was a risk for me to ever trust her again, but I was willing to try. She told me she didn't want me as her dom, but I pointed out that we could still have fun. We have a lot of the gear. She was ambivalent, keeps saying she had put up walls. She has told mutual friends she wants to live the BDSM lifestyle full time. I asked her what her plan was, if she was lonely and unseen before. What was she going to do alone and single? Find a dom in our little town? When I pointed out a fair partner was not going to leave his wife and children, she would always insist that she didn't want to talk about his situation. A few days ago, she told me that a fair partner has told his wife about the affair and that divorce takes a long time in Europe, which is true, so I know they've at least talked about it. That, I think, is the plan. For them to get together someday, somehow, each of our families be damned, so they can live out some movie fantasy. But at what cost? It's also proof they're still in contact. I kicked her out of the bedroom and have asked her to leave the house. She will not leave, and I cannot make her. I do want to keep things as civil as possible if we do divorce because that's where this seems to be headed, and I want to minimize the harm on our child. I feel like she is forcing my hand into the divorce to minimize her responsibility for the whole thing. She will admit she's being selfish, is a monster, etc., all dismissively, but is not taking real responsibility for her actions. She's not doing the kind of things I would do if I had an affair and wanted to keep the relationship, cared about the other person, or what the advice is to begin healing. I am absolutely devastated. Can't eat or sleep. I'm going to counseling twice a week, working out, back on an SSRI to ward off dark thoughts, and yet, here I am, begging her to reconsider. Give us at least one more shot. Try another couples counselor. I'm not even demanding transparency into her accounts, which she continued to create more of or change passwords to until I stopped trying to snoop. Or her to see a solo therapist. I realize she is not going to. I want her to want to fix things, but I am coming to terms she will not. I just don't want to lose her or break up our family and blame myself for missing the signs. Time for some comments. First up, Mushroom Vroom Vroom. You spent more time writing this than she has spent thinking about your feelings in the last year. You know what you need to do. Jalazmi Azalsan says, the wife clearly doesn't want any marriage and family stuff anymore. As he wrote himself, she's living a teenage dream, at the point of seeing her own husband through her fantasy. You're not a dom. You should have had a stronger reaction against the affair. This must be the most terrible thing, though. If you read it, please accept my support, man. Trey Z says, you can't just keep setting ultimatums and hope to scare her straight. You've gone nuclear multiple times, you've brought up this or the divorce, and it doesn't work. At some point, you have to accept that even if you did convince her to stop all of this, that things would never be the same. I say this for your sake. I worry that the toll it is taking will make you more and more resentful, insecure, and reactive. This is traumatizing. Watching someone you love clearly undergo a big change, no matter what informs it. I worry that even if she recovered, that you'd always be on guard, and that hurts, but it is reality. I'm not entirely sure what you denote by low-grade depression or why that framing is important to you, but she rejected therapy, and thus you are ostensibly incapable of truly identifying the issue or her finding meaningful support, and yeah, that is the sad reality of our health system. Reframing it as just a fling, blaming depression, all of these might help you forgive her, but they also trap you in some ways. Because even if it is just a fling, which it clearly isn't, and even if it is low-grade depression, if it is mental health informed, it is likely something much more significant than that. That doesn't change the reality that sometimes damage this bad doesn't heal. And our last comment comes from Comfortable Seaweed 4. She is most likely not depressed, but rather checked out of your marriage. It is horrible, but this is a classic case of the grass is greener on the other side. It's going to be hard to accept that, but you have to. No more nuclear options. Sign the papers and be done. The sooner you get out, the sooner you can move past what is a very controlling woman. There is a future past this marriage. When you're ready, I 100% guarantee there will be another person out there for you who just wants that vanilla sex and a loyal, loving partner.